Test 29. In the Ielts test, you hear some recordings and you have to answer questions on them. You have time to read the instructions and questions and check your work. All recordings are played only once. The test is in 4 sections. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a man and a woman as they discuss the organisation of moving house. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now the full test will begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning. I'm moving house next month and I was advised to come and see you, as you have a good reputation for doing removals. Are you the right person to talk to?
Yes, I am. My name's Sophie and I'd be happy to assist you. What's the exact date you're intending to move?
The 8th of October.
Yes, we have a removals team free that day. Now, I'd just like to take a few details to begin with.
Of course.
What's your name?
Mark Watson.
What's the address you're moving from?
It's 30 Alexander Crescent, Harding. The postcode's HA4 3DE.
And what address are you moving to?
42 Finchley Street, Lexington. The postcode there's LE2 9JU.
Could you spell Finchley for me?
Of course, it's FINCHLEY.
I need a contact number for you, please, Mr. Watson.
I'll give you my mobile number, as you're more likely to get me on that. It's 09976 794 327.
Thanks. Now, at what time would you like our team to arrive at Alexander Crescent to start the move?
As early as possible, please.
We can be there at 8 a.m.
That would be fine.
How would you like to pay your bill when it comes, Mr. Watson?
I'd like to make a transfer once you sent me your invoice.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, what's the size of the property at Alexander Crescent? We need to know so that we can estimate the amount of things that need to be moved.
It's a 3-bedroom property. There are double beds, wardrobes, and cupboards in all the bedrooms to be moved, along with some other smaller pieces of furniture.
OK, got that. How about the living room?
From the living room, I have a sofa and 2 armchairs. They're all quite big. Then there's the coffee table, a sideboard, a TV and DVD machine, and various other bits and pieces.
Good. What about the kitchen?
I'll pack some boxes for you ready, but apart from that, there'll be nothing from the kitchen. I'm leaving the fridge, washing machine, dishwasher, deep freeze and cooking units for the new buyer, and I'm buying new stuff for my new property.
That will make things easier. What about the bathrooms?
Again, there will only be a big chest and some boxes that I'll have packed waiting for you.
Anything else?
In the downstairs hall, there's an old grandfather clock. Please be careful with the clock, as it's been in the family for a long time and it's fragile.
We'll be very careful. That leads me to another question. We have an insurance package for your move that we offer. It's very reasonable in price. We will, of course, be extremely careful with all your belongings, but the insurance will cover you for any kinds of breakages. This could be something small that's dropped to major damage in the event of a crash in the van during the move.
Do you have the details in a leaflet?
Yes, right here.
I'll have a look and let you know if I want it. I'll call you soon.
That's fine. There's no hurry. You can fill in the form inside the leaflet and just post or scan it to me.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a radio program during which the life of a famous resident of the city of Oxford is discussed. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about a famous Oxford resident, Michael Hallam. We Oxford inhabitants all recognise the name of Michael Hallam because of a road and other commemorative landmarks. But many of us don't actually know much about the man. Michael Hallam was born in 1896 and he was brought up in the small village of Bristow, which is about 5 miles outside Oxford. He was educated first at a small village primary school in Bristow from 1904 to 1909, and then later from 1909 to 1914 in a secondary school in Oxford. In 1914, at the age of 18, he was meant to study at Oxford University, but at the outbreak of World War I, he joined the army and was sent to France to fight in 1915. Later that year, he was severely wounded and was hospitalised back to England. It took quite a long time for Hallam to convalesce, but by 1917 he was able to go to Oxford University, where he read engineering and mathematics. His wounds prevented him from returning to the war. After graduating in 1920, Hallam was employed in various engineering jobs, but in 1921 he made the big move to Britain's East Africa, which is now known as Kenya. There he became a partner in the engineering firm, East Africa Engineering. Hallam took a leading part in many of the firm's projects, such as roads, bridges, the airport, sewers, and railways, amongst others. In 1939, Hallam returned to England at the start of World War II. He was too old for active service, but he became a lecturer at the military engineering establishment for the duration of the war. Tragically, he lost his only son in the war, but he still had his 2 daughters who brought him a lot of joy. After the war in 1945, Hallam remained in the UK and became a director on the board of directors of East Africa Engineering. He didn't stand for Parliament until 1950, where he served for 1 term over 4 years as the member for Oxford. In 1961, Hallam retired from work with East Africa Engineering, but with his political background, he became Oxford Mayor in the same year, and held that post until his final retirement in 1966. He moved back to his old family home in Bristow, but he continued to play a lively role in local events. For example, he was very well known as the chairman and later president of Bristow Football Club. In the late 1970s, he became weaker and had several bouts of illness, and finally he died in 1980 at the age of 84.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
Michael Hallam had an amazing life in many ways, but his fame here in Oxford stems from his periods of time in politics, during which he strongly supported local business and local improvement projects. One of the most famous was his project for a new school in Oxford. Hallam's own old school in Oxford had become neglected, and so he took it on himself to make sure that the area it served had a modern school built for both boys and girls. The area's main school today is the very one that he created. Many people believe that he actually spent his own money on the school, and this is true to a certain extent. He didn't actually pay for the school to be built, but he had to do a lot of travelling up and down to London, and he had innumerable meetings all over the country. He used his own money for that and didn't claim any back. Also, when the school was ready, he set up the Hallam Foundation. This is a fund that supports poorer students. For the younger boys and girls, the foundation pays for school basics, such as books, pens, paper, travel expenses, and uniforms. For older students from the school who have the chance to go to university, scholarships are available to help them pay their fees and living expenses. Of course, Hallam did other things in the city. He was the main force behind the town ring road, which took all the heavy traffic out of Oxford. He updated and improved the bus services, and he was also behind the renovation of the train station. Hallam's descendants are still visible in the area. His daughters both had families, and the name Hallam still survives through his nephews. George Hallam is very famous in the area, as he has followed his uncle's footsteps into local and national politics. Another nephew is the director of the Oxford school that Michael Hallam set up. If you're interested in learning more about Michael Hallam, local interested residents have made a half-hour documentary of his life and deeds. This can be seen at the Art House Cinema every afternoon and evening next week, and after that it can be bought on DVD for £15.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students discussing roles and options in a university law department. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi Greg, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. What are you up to?
I have to go to the university soon. As I'm new, I need to find my way around and find out who does what.
Let me help. I study in the same law department as you, but I've been here a year already. I know most of the people you'll have to deal with.
That would be really helpful. Thanks, Greg.
No problem. Let's start with Mrs. Greenwood. She's the head of the admin office for the department. She's super nice and is always willing to help. If you have any problems about your course registration, timetable, any kind of absences, or even if you want to apply for a university parking permit, she's the one to see. If you're not sure about anything, she'll know the answer or who to ask.
Mrs. Greenwood. Okay, I've got that.
Another important one is Mr. Jameson. He's the college bursar. He's responsible for the financial aspects of all the departments, not just ours. If you've any kind of financial issues, then he's the one to talk to. Apparently he's a bit fierce, but very efficient. I'm not sure where his office is, but Mrs. Greenwood can tell you if you ask her.
what if I have an actual problem with my course content?
You need to see the academic secretary. This is Dr. Bird. He's a lecturer as well, but he also has the responsibility for all testing. If you're struggling with anything concerning that, you should see him. He's very approachable. He's also the person to see if you flunk your exams. He organises the retakes and what will happen if you mess up those as well.
I hope I never have to see him. Now, next year, I was thinking of doing an exchange with a student in the US. I was told I'd have to talk with someone about that as soon as possible.
There are lots of people you'll need to talk to about that, but the first should be Mrs. Churchill. She's responsible for exchanges. She's quite hard to find, so ask Mrs. Greenwood where she is when you're looking for her. You'll need to get your course tutor to write you a reference if you want to do an exchange.
I don't even know who that is yet.
It could be anyone. Mine is Dr. Bird. The best to get would be Mrs. Churchill again, as she's so nice. Just ask the department secretary, Mr. Thompson. He has a list of all the course tutors and organises all that. He'll post the list on the department notice board soon, but I don't think he's done it yet.
You now have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the discussion and answer questions 26 to 30.
I also need to know who's lecturing in which subject.
I can let you know that too, though there's a lot of courses on offer in the law department. It depends naturally on which courses you wish to take.
I'm not sure yet.
I'll run you through them then. First of all, there's contract law, which would be important if you want to go into any kind of job in commerce later in life. That's lectured by Mr. Kindred in Hall 312. He also does company and business law, as those areas are all interrelated. That's also in room 312.
I'm not sure about a business-style job later. I quite like the idea of something connected to international relations.
Well, if you're interested in that kind of job in the future, you might consider the international law option, which is lectured on by Dr. Bird. He lectures in Hall 314, and it's quite a popular course. I do that one myself.
What else would be connected to that style of course?
Well, if you're interested in that type of course, then the immigration law course is very useful. Dr. Bird lectures on that one too, though in Hall 318. I know a lot of people have gone from that course into government departments. The hirers for this type of job are very keen on students who've taken that course.
My father's a solicitor in our town. I know he'd like me to eventually work with him, so I might take a course that would keep him happy.
That's a popular career option as well, of course. The family law course lectured on by Mrs. Churchill in Hall 315 would be the choice to keep your father happy. Liability law, or tort as it's called in legal circles, is also done by Mrs. Churchill in Hall 315, and that would also help a career as a solicitor.
I heard that a fortune can be made as a tax advisor, if you're good.
That's true, though as you say, you have to be good. There's a tax law course in Hall 311. It's given by Professor Hurd, and that will surely be your passport to riches if that's the career you want. He also does the criminal law course in the same room, if you want to be a barrister. They make good money too, if they're good.
Well, I'm not sure yet, but it's good to keep my options open. Are there any more courses?
Yes, but I'll need to have a look at the course paperwork, which is in my flat. Do you want to come back for a cup of tea and I'll show you the rest of the courses?
Yes, thanks.
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of an agriculture lecture on sheep farming in Iceland. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. Today in this agricultural lecture, we're going to look at an unusual farming practice. Iceland is famous for many things. We've all heard of the lunar landscape, the volcanoes, the fishing, the beautiful people and the expense, but not many of us know much about the sheep industry there. Sheep farming is practiced in sparsely settled areas throughout Iceland, with about 2,000 farmers engaged in it. Sheep farming in Iceland is as old as the settlement of Iceland itself. To this day, farmers are rearing their sheep by methods established by centuries of tradition, with most farms still owned and operated by families. Icelandic sheep are short-tailed and belong to a breed formerly common in northwestern Europe, but now only to be found in very few areas of the world. The Icelandic sheep is a direct descendant of the sheep first brought to the island by the Viking settlers, and has not been crossbred by importing other breeds. It is a strong, hardy breed, which has adapted well to the harsh Icelandic conditions that influence the composition of the plants the sheep graze on. The lambs also move freely throughout extensive wild pastures in pristine mountainous landscapes. The muscle has a high proportion of omega-3 fatty acids and iron, giving the meat its wild game flavor. The distinctive taste is a result of the wild pastures and the aromatic and spicy herbs on which the lambs graze. Icelandic farmers, along with scientists, have been involved in sheep breeding for decades, aiming to produce high-quality meat. The breeding is unique in that more than 90% of the sheep stock is registered in a breeding database, where scientists and farmers can use the information to improve their production. Breeding advances have also increased due to the regular use of the country's best rams for breeding across the country. From the beginning on, the main emphasis in the breeding of Icelandic lamb has been on higher quality of meat, and to do this, the focus has always been on increased muscle buildup. However, over the last 2 decades, farmers have put an equal effort into decreasing fat. Iceland is in Europe, although very far north. It therefore follows the European seasonal management of sheep. The Icelandic lambs are born in spring. A few weeks after the lambing in May, sheep used to be sent to run free and graze in mountain pastures until autumn, feeding on the rich and nourishing vegetation. However, as a result of the recent reductions in flocks, animals are increasingly kept in home pastures. Farmers gather their flock in the autumn. Usually, the roundup is carried out on horseback with the assistance of sheepdogs. Each sheep farmer uses earmarks in order to recognize his livestock, and the process can take up to a week. During this time, participants stay overnight in mountain huts located throughout the highlands. After the gathering, the sheep are all sorted into designated pens, according to ownership. Many people, farmers or not, come to watch or take part in this event on the last day, which is usually followed by a big celebration the same night. This is a tradition cherished by Icelanders. One problem Icelandic sheep farmers face is maintaining fences, as the harsh climate in winter often means normal fencing can be easily damaged, and replacing the damaged areas can be expensive and time-consuming. To combat this, Many sheep farmers in Iceland often use temporary fencing that can be taken down in winter when the flocks are in shelter. Temporary fences are held by reasonably sturdy fence posts with lighter sentinel tread-ins between, which are lighter posts. These hold the polywire, which is a lightly electrically charged cable that ensures the sheep do not break through. The polywire can be unwound or brought in using a reel, which is attached to a fence post at the start of the fence. The temporary electric fencing system farmers choose must be fit for purpose, so that it can create an effective barrier against the number of livestock being controlled. Part of this process is using a suitable voltage that will deter sheep from touching the fence, but will not harm them. In order to monitor this, an alert is periodically hung from the polywire. These provide a warning to the farmer if the fence voltage drops below the level required for effective stock containment. The voltage charge does not need any type of battery source and is solely produced by a solar energizer, which is mounted on a fence post.
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.